New Galaxy Broadcasting proudly presents Integrative Hermetic Health with Hugo Rodier, MD. In this program, we explore a powerful new paradigm for health from the standpoint of integrative medicine. In his practice, Dr. Rodier integrates the ancient Hermetic art and the enduring role of food as medicine with modern nutrition, but also allowing for the wide range of important health practices, including truly valuable medical discoveries, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathic, and herbal medicine. In this program, Hugo Rodier, an expert in intestinal health and nutrition, will help the audience discover an approach that focuses on actual cures, not the masking of the elegant simplicity of many health solutions for the sake of profit. Profit too long has been an overriding motive of the pharmaceutical companies, and sometimes, sadly, by many in the medical establishment today. This is Johnny Bluestar. Today I'm delighted to assist Hugo Rodier, MD, who hosts this program, the Integrative Hermetic Health Show. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Johnny. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Today we were returning to our last topic on this, the second program on nutritional deficiency in physician, which translates to the unfortunate lack of nutritional savvy by modern medical physicians due in part to their lack of training in nutrition and the emphasis on pharmaceuticals in research and in their practice. In this last program, we touched on three main pillars of interest: nutrition directly, relationships, and the environment. In our conversation, these three pillars all deal with human beings being able to meet their nutritional needs, and environment and relationships do have a bearing on that specific outcome. Let us first return to the pillar of relationships. We talked about the effect of The Little Prince and Camus' work, The Stranger, had on your realization of the importance of people in your life. The prince, who has escaped from an asteroid and visited Earth, discovers there was a source of happiness in the camaraderie on the asteroid he came from. A fox counsels him, "It is only with the heart that one can see clearly. What is important is invisible to the eye." And in playing the lead part in a play based on The Stranger, a novel by Camus, you realize the deficit you would experience if you neglected to be a social person, someone gregarious who cares for other people. And ultimately, I infer this led to your focus on medicine, on the whole person, and your effort to really know your patients, not just as an object to be fed medicine, but as a human being whose well-being in terms of bodily functions, even as related directly to nutrition, in that same way, depends on relationships and the environment. So let me ask you a question about relationships, specifically about that special person in your life. I have found over the years that any kind of friction in relationships of this type can often only be remedied with comfort food. And also the stresses of relationship problems can be painful, as in many forms of sickness. How do you deal with these kinds of problems with your patients, and how do these problems characteristically affect their dietary habits?
Well, it's hard to address this with patients because a whole lot of them are not aware that this is an issue. So all you can hope to do initially is to ask questions about their social life and then begin planting seeds. Because if you push too hard, people will feel that you're preaching to them. So it's a delicate, fine line that one must walk. But as you begin a relationship with patients, I think that they will be quite open to these issues if you have shown that you care, that you want them to get better and work at the root of all issues, and you do not intend to ridicule them or preach to them. I think most people know deep in their hearts, that loneliness, a lack of social connections is a big, big issue. At some level they do. And it's a process of bringing that to the forefront and also linking those lonely feelings with disease. If you do it too early, the first thing they'll think, and you've heard this before, "Oh, the doctor thinks that it's all in my mind, that I'm just imagining that I'm crazy." Of course, that will be reinforced because so many physicians in the orthodox way of practicing will prescribe an antidepressant for just about any unexplained symptom. And so one has to be careful. Through the years, hope I've learned to do it in a caring way and without imposing my own beliefs, because theology and philosophy can get in the way as well, especially with patients that tend to be a little more dogmatic about their beliefs. So, it's a great question, a great topic to address, the mind-body connection.
Well, what about, what I'm thinking about is there's still a high divorce rate in America, and people are always, coming together and breaking up. And those are very painful things. I think they're more stressful than the normal type of relationship problems. Do you think so?
Yes, I absolutely. That's the most important relationship as adults. We want to be in an intimate relationship, and the statistics are not good. Of 12 marriages, 6 will divorce. Of the remaining couples, 2 of them do really well. They're soulmates, if you will, that type of relationship. Another 2 are just roommates, just the convenience of being roommates, and they probably get along fairly well. And then the other 2 should divorce. So, yeah, that can have a big impact on our HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis.
Right.
That's a cornerstone of the mind-body connection. So I'm always looking for adrenal issues. The adrenals, the glands of stress that are the receivers of all the stress that comes pouring down from the brain, from our thinking, from our feeling, will then put out 32 hormones under stress, and a whole lot of them will impact our health, our metabolism, our immune system. And so, that has to be looked into on practically every patient.
Well, maybe this is an unanswerable question. I don't know if medical knowledge is up to it, but, people have something called heartbreak. And we were talking about how only with the heart one can see clearly. Well, when one has heartbreak, one can't see very clearly at all. It's very, very painful. And do you know what happens to a person physiologically when they have some kind of terrible separation from someone they love, or the person dies, or something like that? Do we know what happens to them?
HPA, right. It's the HPA axis. The adrenals are working overtime, and they release a lot of hormones that will have a negative impact on every organ system. So the HPA axis is overwrought. But also, we're finding that the heart itself has a brain. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a mini brain, if you will. So the Heart Code is a great book to read. Blanking out on the author, but we have very good evidence that the heart acts first before the brain. So there's a gap there between becoming aware of something and feeling the heart skipping a beat. You notice that in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever paid attention to that, how your heart might skip a beat before you become aware what a thought or a feeling might be? And
I'm not sure of that. I'm not sure of that.
Well, pay attention next time.
Okay.
And this is corroborated by good studies that show a gap between we become aware of anything. The heart already has been sending messages to the rest of the body. We're finding that the heart, the energy of the heart, is over 5,000 times the energy of the brain. And so the ancients knew that we feel by the heart.
In the 1920s and 30s, there was a sort of spiritual teacher named Gurdjieff, and he basically talked about self-observation. And what he said was that there are to start out with, there are 3 centers to look at. One is the moving center, the physical body. The second is the intellectual center, the mind. And the third was the heart, was the emotional center, or the heart. And he said that these centers act independently of each other. So I thought it was very interesting to see how science is sort of validating this sort of idea of man being a 3-brain creature.
Yes, and then we mustn't forget the second brain. That's the title of a book by Gershon, who showed that most of our neurotransmitters, like serotonin, are found in the gut. Mm-hmm. So we have gut feelings, and I guess we can throw that into the mind or the body part. But it's my job as an integrative physician is to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And while what you quoted is totally true, it is also true that the goal is to integrate those functions, those parts, right, to where they work in harmony instead of being opposed to one another. And, I think women are great, and we have much to learn from them because they're more in touch with their feelings. So often you see women in bad relationships who develop all kinds of symptoms because of that bad relationship, and not wanting and feeling trapped because they might not find a way to get out. They don't feel like addressing or totally becoming fully aware of this conflict, because they can't do anything about it. So they start to focus on all the body ailments, lack of sleep, poor digestion, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel for them because often the answer is in facing the music, and it's hard to do.
Well, what is the role when you're under stress like that? I go to comfort food, and actually,
Exactly.
what are the dynamics of comfort food, and why do we get this comfort out of them?
I have a cartoon, an 8-minute cartoon posted on my website answering this question.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so if you go to hugorodia.com and front page, it says health class twice, because there are 2 of them. And the smaller file will then trigger a cartoon presentation showing you how eating poorly feeds bad organisms in the gut. And so the bottom line is that bad organisms thrive on sugar, comfort food, if you will. So they send messages to your brain demanding that you keep feeding them that way, especially at times of stress when you release a lot of glucocorticoids that affect your gut bacteria in negative ways, and also increasing the number and function of these bad bacteria that will not be happy until you feed them. So pretty soon you get into a vicious cycle where the only thing that will calm you down, those stressful feelings, is eating sugar. Then the bad bacteria is happy, and their neurotransmitters that they put out to signal for you to go eat that food come down, and then you feel better.
That's something that's really interesting to me, because you're actually saying that these bacteria, which are not really part of the human physiology exactly, they're separated, are they not?
Yes and no. We need to remind our listeners that gut bacteria runs the show. They have 150 times more genetic material than our bodies do. A great book out there, Planet Bacteria, makes the point real well that our thoughts can be controlled by this bacteria. And so here in our vaunted captain of the soul type, Invictus type of approach that we have in America, it's pretty humbling to realize that we might not be running the show. I have in front of me an article from the journal Nature this month, titled the article Links Between Gut Microbes and Depression Strengthened.
Really?
And there's so much material about this very issue. I can tell you about, I forget the name, the guy who wrote Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, great book. And that's sort of my generation's way of, or book to describe all this. And the reason zebras don't get ulcers, because they don't think. Well, actually they do, but they live in the moment. So, yeah, if they see a tiger chasing, they skedaddle quickly. But then they relax until they see the tiger again. But not humans. We are always thinking about the tiger that got us last month, that it might be lurking and that it will get us in the future. So it's like we never stop thinking about a potential disaster unless we train ourselves to live in the moment like animals do. And that's why one of the reasons why I love animals. I love my cat because he teaches me so much to live in the moment. But anyway, I digressed a little bit, but the author of this book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, describes being at a meeting in New York, a scientific meeting, and he's sitting on the steps of the Museum of the Art Museum by the park, I forget, the Metropolitan
Museum of Art,
he sees a puddle of water. It just rained. And he starts thinking about all the microbes in that puddle. And he has this mystical experience where he gets it. The microbes are running the show. Then he goes on to quote a famous study about toxoplasmosis. Well, not one study, but what we know about this parasite-like organism. You're familiar with toxoplasmosis, right?
No, absolutely not.
This is the bug that lives in cat litter, okay? And that's why we tell pregnant women don't even think about coming close to a cat, particularly its litter. Don't change the litter box.
Okay, I never heard that.
Because there might be toxoplasmosis. Yeah, that's a common recommendation if you're doing OB. But you don't want pregnant women around cat litter boxes. If they so much catch that bug, toxoplasmosis, their kids will be born with a whole lot of problems. And so it turns out that this scientist then started thinking about toxoplasmosis, how this bug infects rats. And that's the reason cats end up with it, because they eat rats or mice. Well, it turns out that when toxoplasmosis infects a rat, the rats lose the fear of cats. Thereby they get eaten by the cat. And guess what toxoplasmosis is doing here? Ensuring its survival and propagation. So you might say the mice, they know what they're doing. Really? When a bug in their own gut made them lose the fear of their mortal enemy, the feline, and then they get eaten. So extrapolate from there.
That is astounding. That is really an astounding thought.
This was published in the journal Nature as well, or was it Scientific American? I'll have to review it. But yeah, very compelling evidence that our vaunted ego, it's not as tough as we think it is. But, instead of rolling over, this is a great opportunity to look into what Christians call grace. That is, we should be a little more humble and realize that our life and our thoughts are gifts of God or consciousness, whatever you want to call it, and be open to be guided. Be open our hearts to the things that we cannot see, to those subtle things that will lead us away from materialistic consumption that is ruining our environment.
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, listen, we're going to continue our discussion. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. My company, New Galaxy Enterprises, is a California corporation specializing in the creation of media and promotional content. We are focused on original, innovative projects that are good for humanity. These projects could be nonfiction books or novels, fictional screenplays or documentary content, websites and website content, commercial advertising content for print, audio, or video products on the internet, television, or radio, musical scores for advertising, television or film, video, audio editing, etc. We want to promote products and projects that support the environment, encourage a healthy experience in living, developing, nurturing, and useful technology, and offering platforms for positive, socially constructive entertainment or informative, transformative media. Our experience in creating a variety of products like this is rather vast, and we offer client-based and collaborative products, as well as the opportunity of active investors to join us in the creation and promotion of proprietary products, some of which are in latter stages of development. For more information, go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. That's www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. If you're interested in talking to us, just fill out the contact sheet and we will get back with you. If you're not fond of books, you may be interested in watching Dr. Rodier's slide presentation on his website, hugorodier.com. That's HUGORODIER.com. It lasts 48 minutes and explains the simple roots of all diseases with pictures and graphs that are easy to understand. The presentation includes basic principles of physics, philosophy, anthropology, and history to truly integrate the most vital pillars of human health. Speaking of the pillar of relationships, we'll now play Lightstorm's The Dance of Love.
Atoms of light, worlds
We're back on the Integrative Hermetic Health Show with Dr. Rodier, and we're going to be discussing actually the first pillar we're going to go over again about nutrition, because there's so much to talk about. And one of the things that I'm really interested in, because I am interested in areas related to diabetic and pre-diabetic conditions, is the role of the liver in the functioning, in a fully functioning metabolism, and how it's related to diabetes or protecting us from it.
Well, it's huge. Liver function is best understood when you realize that the liver takes its marching orders from the gut bacteria. So the gut bacteria influences the liver how to metabolize sugar and how to detoxify, two huge areas of metabolism. Combustion, it's the same as combustion, fueling and blowing out the products of combustion, the same as the cellular level that we see in a motor. And so it turns out that the liver, when overburdened by a lot of sugar and chemicals, will become fatty. Fatty liver is an epidemic in the United States. And so a fatty liver will not process sugar very well, will not process lipids or oils very well. And that's where we see cholesterol problems. So cholesterol problems are a liver issue, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, so, and then it turns out that a lot of chemicals out there are obesogenics or diabetogenics, meaning even pollution can cause the liver to not process sugar very well and metabolize poorly. Remember that fructose is metabolized in the liver as well. So I pay a lot of attention to liver issues. I'm always checking for liver function in patients. The best way to do it in the blood is to look at the ALT and the GGT. These are molecules that are checked in a comprehensive metabolic panel, which is routinely done by doctors. So you should ask the doctor, what did the GGT and the ALT show? Because we'll give you a quick impression of where your liver is. Of course, you can also get an ultrasound of the liver, and a whole lot of people will show a little coat of fat around the liver, which is often dismissed by doctors as normal. That's crazy. It's not normal. You might not be having symptoms right now, but you're well on your way to pre-diabetes if you're not already there. And then diabetes if you keep eating poorly, processed foods and whatnot. So, yeah, the liver is huge. And a lot of people get into liver cleanses.
Yeah.
You know, look, you got to fix your gut bacteria. Don't worry about the liver until you fix your gut bacteria. And you do that by eating a lot of fiber, prebiotics, like we talked about, taking probiotics, digestive enzymes. Some people require going after bad bacteria in the gut, which can be done herbally if the problem is not too pronounced. And then the liver will be a whole lot better. Now, if you still think you got liver problems, yeah, you can use other things for the liver, like alpha-lipoic acid from broccoli. We already mentioned that. It became a drug in Europe to treat liver disorders, even though it's just an antioxidant from cruciferous, particularly broccoli. Then there's SAMe. We also talked about that. Became a drug in Europe as well. SAMe, a B vitamin derivative, is a precursor, as alpha-lipoic acid is glutathione. Glutathione being one of the most important antioxidants for liver detoxification. It's also great for the brain, glutathione. There are many other glutathione precursors, if you're still interested in the liver, like NAC, N-acetylcysteine, an amino acid that became a drug in the United States to cleanse the liver after Tylenol overdosages in the emergency room. Then there's milk thistle for people who love herbs. So yeah, the liver is huge. And so I worry a lot about pathways of detoxification in the liver. The other one that I worry a lot about is glucuronidation. Glucuronidation in the liver fueled by cruciferous, alpha-lipoic acid, sulforanes, and indole-3-carbinol, the main nutrients in cruciferous veggies to fuel glucuronidation in the liver. And then, perhaps the most important, methylation in the liver. Methylation is fueled by B vitamins, which most people are lacking. So if you do the math, our denuded diets, our toxic environments predispose you to toxicity issues in the liver, and that's when we start to have cancers, because cancers are environmental, 85% environmental. So if you want to lower your risk of cancer, fix your gut flora, fix your liver, and you do that by eating a plant-based diet.
What is the relationship between the fatty liver and maybe insulin resistance?
Oh, very good. Yeah, that's a huge point. I kind of touched on it a little bit by talking about metabolism, which is how insulin resistance, yes, you're going to find that in fatty liver. Why? Insulin resistance is cell membranes at every level of the body, including the hepatocyte or the liver, the main liver cells and neurons in the brain and every other cell. All these cells have a cell membrane made up of mostly fats. And then you have proteins and sugars and making up these cell membranes. Well, if you're not eating the correct foods, these cell membranes will be more brittle, less responsive to messages that cells send each other to metabolize, to process energy, to fuel every cell of the body to do their function. And so one of those main messengers are hormones. And one of the the most important hormone, arguably, is insulin. So you can see if we're not eating well, if our liver is fatty, insulin cannot get into those cells to fuel those cells to do the right job.
So insulin could be organ specific too, right? In other words, if your liver is fatty, that could really mess up a lot of aspects of your metabolism, even if other organs are sort of free of that problem and wouldn't be as insulin resistant.
Yes, true. There's different degrees of insulin resistance in every type of cell in the body. However, when you start to have insulin resistance in one organ, the others are not far behind. In fact, a big part of the epidemic of Alzheimer's and cognitive issues, a lot of people are calling it type 3 diabetes, meaning your neurons in the brain are becoming insulin resistant. And so the neurons in the brain are not getting enough energy to do their job. And I tell you, the most sensitive organ to energy fluctuations is the brain. And so type 3 diabetes, Google that. It's going to be shocking because you can think of every memory lapse you got is because you ate too many M&Ms and too many milk duds, So, yeah, that's pretty motivational. Oh, that leads me to erectile dysfunction. In the context of what we spoke on, erectile dysfunction, you might think of it as insulin resistance in the cells lining the arteries, the wallpaper of the arteries, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so every Twinkie you eat might give you trouble with your erections later on. Now, talk about motivation.
I'm sorry. Well, I was thinking, I don't know if you've seen this, but because you probably don't watch as much television as I do of mainstream media to look at the opposition. But anyway, there's an ad now. Now, this isn't really erectile dysfunction, but it's another problem with erectile functioning, okay? And it's and they're actually having people hold bananas and pickles and things to illustrate their points in an advertisement on TV. It's pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting what the culture we live in, huh?
Yeah. That was like, oh my God, another level of this. Well, I have another question, and this sort of fits into the relationship aspect. What do you think? I'm dealing with an acute awareness of what's happening in Venezuela right now. And I'm also dealing with an acute awareness that there's a law being passed, it's been passed by the Senate, that has to do with boycotting Israel. In other words, we're not allowed to boycott a country where there are actually criminal effects. And now we're going and maybe performing a coup in another country. Well, some of these things that are happening seem to me extremely stressful. And one of the things that I think about a lot, and I wonder if a lot of people do, constantly being bombarded, like with a government shutdown, for instance. How does this affect our health?
Yeah, great question. It goes back to the second pillar, relationships and the stresses of life. And all these things are driven, even international politics, by a malady of the heart, where we have a totally materialistic view of the world. And it's all about consumption. So when countries are hell-bent on maintaining their consumptive lifestyles, they will fight for resources and markets, and that leads to war. And so that's what is the bottom of all these conflicts, that we are left-brain societies that have abandoned the feminine of our natures, which would lead us to peace and to just getting along and less violence and less testosterone approaches. Look,
well, I think a lot of the American citizens they're not really all that active in their thinking. They're more or less they're not voting for people based on real assumptions about, political interests, real political interests. But yet, so much has been taken away from us in terms of our rights, and we're continually involved in warfare while hanging under the umbrella of truly a danger of nuclear extermination, which hasn't existed for, decades and decades, since probably the Cuban Missile Crisis. Do you think this is affecting people's health?
Oh, absolutely. I was leading to that. So when we are under stress, just reading the newspaper, we engage our HPA axis. And we talked about that, the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. The bedpan of the brain, the bottom of the brain is where the hypothalamus is, and that's where sits the pituitary. So all these stresses in our head, thinking and overthinking and worrying, puts a lot of pressure on the pituitary, which is the master gland of hormones. So all kinds of hormones are released from the pituitary that rain down on the body, on every cell of the body, particularly the cells of the adrenal glands, which they themselves produce 32 hormones. And so we're in a constant stress state of geared up adrenal function, a constant state of being alert, fight or flight. And so those hormones that are produced by the adrenals can not only affect your metabolism. See, some of those hormones are called glucocorticoids. So yeah, we start to gain weight just by worrying. And then all those other hormones speed up your heart. And so we have more heart disease, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, that's the linchpin of this relationship pillar that we talked about.
Yeah.
When we're geared up like that, our adrenals are frothing. And then they can't recover very well because we don't rest them. We don't take a break. We have to work. We have to worry about the newspaper and the news. And then we're not eating properly to absorb well the micronutrients that would help restore health to the adrenals. And that's why adrenal supplementation can be huge for most people, including people that are obese, because of what I talked about.
What kind of supplementation?
Well, they're pretty basic. I wouldn't just do that. As you can see, you want to work on the whole package, but the specific question then leads me to answer Korean ginseng, DHEA, ashwagandha, rhodiola, minerals. Those are very good for the adrenals. And I see a lot of improvement in most conditions because I suspect that most people have a distraught HPA axis.
Well, I'll tell you what, this has been very enlightening. We've had a lot of detailed conversation about all three pillars, nutrition, relationships, and the environment. And it makes me think that our culture has a lot farther to go to really bring true health to its citizenry.
Yes, let me conclude with hearkening back to that Lancet article that eating candy twice a month leads to a longer life. The point here being is that I'm a bit of a Buddhist this way. I view the world as it is because it's the way it should be for some reason. I don't know. I'm not smart enough. But I believe in a higher power, a higher consciousness. We can't be that dumb and not be in touch with what's going on. And so at a certain level, the best way to cope with this, believe it or not, is rolling over with a punch, accepting things. Now, I know we've talked about this philosophically. Somebody has to be blowing the whistle out there. That's you, all right? And I'm glad that you're doing that. Some people have to do it. But then some other people have to come up with this other thing that I just mentioned. And hopefully we come to a balanced approach where we keep an eye on both sides. Yes, there we got problems. But on the other side, develop a more accepting way of living. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that in my point of view, you have to be here now, and also you need to be there now. And when there is the perfected situation that you wish. But they both actually have to be maintained in the present moment, which is awareness of what's happening now, but also in your mind, you can be somewhere else. And sometimes that's important.
Exactly. Yeah, we create these little islands of peace around us by getting rid of toxic people around us, by being kind every time we come in contact with other people by reading the sports page for fun instead of concentrating so much on the headlines that can be brutal. I read both.
Well, I myself am, I guess you'd say, I'm fascinated by film. And that's one of the things that I don't know. I sometimes wonder how I could exist without being able to completely give myself over to an imaginary world like that.
Yeah,
and I write those things and so forth, but I just really enjoy experiencing that. And I think that you have to have that kind of thing in your life to be truly happy.
Very well said. Let me, if I have time, bring back this Green Book movie nominated for an Oscar.
Yes, it's around now.
You know that
again.
It was banned?
It's banned?
Yes, because it was nominated. But did you know that a whole lot of critics banned it and
really
listed as the 10 worst movies of the year?
What?
Yeah, I tell you why. Well, how would I know why? But I'm giving you my impression. There are a whole lot of left-brain people out there that believe that we cannot answer or tackle or address racism unless somebody dies and it's maimed and there's misery and it's totally disgusting and depressing. All right? No, you can address tough issues with gentleness, with fun, with humor, with fiction to where you are left with hope, and at the same time you leave the theater smiling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I went to that movie and just from the very beginning of it, I was totally engrossed in that movie. And I love that movie.
Me too.
And it's back in the theaters now. It's still around.
Right. I hope it wins a lot of awards. But my point is, yes, we can treat tough issues with a little bit of fun. It's not the right way to say it. With such gentleness that we're motivated by positivity and not walk out hopeless and distressed and bummed out.
And I think that's one of the reasons that fiction in movies and fiction in literature is very important. It's important to feed the heart as well as the brain.
Exactly why I quoted those two books, The Little Prince and L'Étranger.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much. And we'll be in touch shortly next week, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny.
This is Johnny Bluestar, CEO of New Galaxy Enterprises, a media content development company. The original productions by Amazon, Hulu, and Netflix in particular has opened up a new and powerful form of television that has both global income and still unexplored profit potential as convergence between offline and online media continues to blossom. We can help persons needing creative help to turn their ideas for television pilots into actionable, marketable scripts. There's probably nothing more exciting in the field of entertainment than these new vistas online as that capacity crosses more and more to the big screen, and the opportunities for instantaneous online projections of any type of media in that perennially popular venue. To learn more about New Galaxy, see samples of our work, or talk to us about your project, please go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com and fill out the contact form. Patriots Act is a Brent Marks legal thriller written by Kenneth Eade, a novelist and attorney, often appearing on Threshold Radio. It's about Ahmed, a naturalized U.S. citizen formerly of Iraq, who was sent to Guantanamo Bay detention camp with no real knowledge of a crime he has committed. Brent Marks, a California attorney, is originally hired by Ahmed's wife to fight for his release. The novel opens with a convincing mock execution, a mode of torture meant to break down a prisoner in a brutal and traumatic way that foreshadows Ahmed's actual death in the hands of his accusers.
Ahmed felt the butt of the rifle strike his spine as his knees buckled and he hit the floor.
Move faster, Haji. Up against the wall. Stop there. Good, listen up. My name is Sergeant Brown. You're here because you refused to cooperate in interrogations. The decision has been made to execute you by firing squad.
Wait, I'm an American citizen.
Ahmed felt the black bag ripped from his head and for the first time faced his aggressors. He found himself facing a man in camouflage fatigues, holding an M16 to his chest. Beside him, an 8-man firing squad with their rifles in ready position.
I have the right to talk to an attorney. This is all a big mistake.
Brown fastened a leather strap around Ahmed's waist, pinning his spine to a wooden post.
Yeah, Big mistake. You should have cooperated when we asked you about your superiors in Al-Qaeda.
I don't know anyone in Al-Qaeda.
Do you have any last statement, Haji?
But
I repeat, do you have any last statement?
I'm not a terrorist. I'm an American citizen. I've a right to a lawyer and a trial. You've denied me these rights. You will answer to God for your crimes.
I think you can see who has all the rights here. Ready? Aim!
The 8 pointed their rifles at Ahmed. Shivering uncontrollably, Ahmed's knees gave way, and he hung on the post like a man crucified.
Fire!
The deafening explosion of the 8 rifles was the last thing Ahmed heard. He felt the bullets hit his flesh, and his body crumpled forward, hanging lifelessly from the post like a scarecrow.
We've talked about stressful relationships causing nutritional deficiency. I wrote the lyrics to this song, Desperate Games, with composer Edgar Ahrens. In the following performance, Patricia Welch captures the intensity of a seriously deficient relationship. Let's listen.
Your shadow marks the brazen breeze. I sense you're near and slowly freeze, tempted by your lips and your touch. The cup of you is way too much. I drink from you in sleep, in dreams, and mourn your loss in muffled screams, which
We're now going to say goodbye. We'll go out with a song by a wonderfully talented singer-songwriter from UK, Stephanie Slevin, in What Goes Round. For more information about Dr. Rodier's practice, books, blogs, and newsletters, contact Hugo Rodier, MD, at www.hugorodier.com. That's HUGORODIER.com.
Say what goes around comes right back around, but that's not true for me. They say what goes around comes right back around, and that it comes in threes. Please bring me rest, bring me some peace. Please knock on my door, and I promise I'll ask for nothing forever, evermore. And step into the light. Close your eyes, embrace, you feel tomorrow's end of